As the week went on, the good news kept coming for the Louisville men's basketball team. On Friday evening, five-star 2024 small forward Trenton Flowers committed to Kenny Payne's program and reclassified to the 2023 class. We're going to talk about what Flowers brings to the table immediately for next season and more. So with that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinal Sports Zone. Also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. I want to take this time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On the Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team, every day. As I mentioned, with each and every day, it seemed like there was more good news for the Louisville men's basketball program last week. On Friday evening, 2024 five-star small forward Trenton Flowers committed to the Cardinals and reclassified to 2023. We'll talk about what he brings to the table next season. We'll also talk about Roosevelt Wheeler entering the transfer portal and what that means for the Cardinals front court. And then finally, we will discuss the Louisville women's basketball team's victory over Drake in the opening round of the NCAA women's basketball tournament. So beginning with the big news on Friday, 2024 five-star small forward Trenton Flowers made his pledge to the Cardinals and immediately reclassified into the 2023 recruiting class. This was a decision that I would say if you asked many Louisville fans over the past month, they'd probably say, Louisville's probably got a decent shot. But over the past week or so, a lot of crystal ball projections, a lot of future casts had been placed in favor of the Cardinals. So Flowers was trending to U of L since the previous weekend before Dennis Evans even committed. So wasn't necessarily a shock, but nonetheless, still very, very good news. Continues a very solid stretch of recruiting momentum for Kenny Payne and the rest of the Cardinals coaching staff, which was direly needed for this program. Big thing to focus on here is that he is immediately eligible, reclassifying to the 2023 class. You look at what he was ranked in the 2024 class, which was 21st overall, 20th if you're looking at the 24/7 Sports Composite, 7th best small forward, number 2 prospect in the state of North Carolina, the 6'8", 6'9", 210-pound Charlotte, North Carolina native, starred for Combine Academy over the past couple seasons, and it'll be interesting to see where he ranks in the 2023 class, but more immediate help for the Cardinals next season. I think that a lot of people have differentiating opinions on the type of player that Flowers is going to be at the next level. Some think he's going to be more of a wing. Some people think he's going to be more of a ball dominant, hybrid 2-3. I think there's some truth in both of those. Point Guard Eyes on Twitter at Point Guard Eyes had a great breakdown. I want to read the breakdown that he had of Trenton Flowers' game. He says, Flowers showed solid progress this year. The high ceiling 6'8" wing lifted his floor with greater scoring versatility to go with explosive physical tools plus slashing skill set, including mid-range and rim attack upgrades. Flowers pressures the rim with an expanded handle that allows him to board, push, and attack with growing self-creation and semi-transit, and from the point of attack in the half court. At his best, when he's decisive, direct, and getting downhill to his right. He thrives alongside playmakers as well as an explosive slasher who makes timely cuts with purpose and fits the lane and fills the lanes in transition, shows good speed with and without the ball, attacks with urgency, and finishes with either hand around the rim using advanced footwork and top-tier athleticism. Point Guard Eyes goes on to say, Flowers uses his threat to drive, improved handle, and effective first step to create space and get to his mid-range spots where he rises high with growing accuracy at his best when operating with aggressive, efficient dribbles using 1 to 3 dribble moves right or left. Mid-range comes in various ways, but from 3, he's singularly reliable as a spot-up shooter. Only shot about 27% in the calendar year. Development has been steady and sure, indicating that the best is yet to come. Possesses natural instincts on and off the ball, shows promises of playmaking and plays with a real motor, owns ideal positional size, advanced athleticism, and exhibits growing two-way versatility. Areas of development include balance off the bounce, patience on the initial catch, more north to south and not more east and west, perimeter shooting consistency, continued space creation on the ball, finishing in traffic, defending the dribble drive, and functional strength. I thought that was very, very overall, I thought it was very insightful because it really broke down Trenton Flowers' game, and I think that it highlights some of the things that I found most encouraging was that creation from the mid-range. I love the notion that he attacks the mid-range, which is kind of the, so to speak, lost art of basketball. With the increasingly more driven three-point ideology of modern basketball, the mid-range gets overlooked a little bit. I like that Flowers utilizes that mid-range. It still does allow you to now believe that he needs to get better at three-point shooting, but at the end of the day, I think that this is a situation where, he's just scratching the surface of what he can be as a wing. I think that he projects more of a 2-3 than a 1-2, and there's nothing wrong with that. He has the ability to handle the basketball, has shown the ability to create for his teammates. As Point Guard Eyes shows, I think that, making sure that he's decisive and doesn't necessarily, go ad lib with the basketball is probably when he's at his best, when he catches the ball with the idea of what he wants to do. So I'm excited for what he brings to the table. I do need to admit when I'm wrong, though. And there was something that I said last week when we talked about Trenton Flowers possibly reclassifying. I said most of the time players that reclassify are not successful year one. I did a little bit more research into that, and it really I came to find out that it wasn't necessarily as one-sided as I had believed. So I do need to admit when I'm wrong there. Looking at it from the past handful of years or so, there's been a handful of guys that have really been solid in year one. From Jalen Duren, looking through Marcus Howard. Let's see. Marcus Howard, Kyra Lewis Jr., Jalen Duren, like I mentioned, Josh Primo, Chris Smith was solid as a freshman. Shaden Sharp, he reclassified, didn't play in college, but he went on to be very good in the NBA so far. Jonathan Kuminga, AJ Lawson, Ashton Hagans from Kentucky, so on and so forth. There's been a lot more solid players that had reclassified than I'd originally thought. Now, there are some players that did reclassify and did not play all that well to start out. Carter Witt from Wake Forest. Let's see. Justice Williams, LSU. Devin Askew from Kentucky. Joey Baker from Duke. Michi Johnson. Let's see. Yeah, Michi Johnson from Ohio State. Addison Patterson from Oregon. Jonathan Aku from Texas A&M, Enoch Bakoye from Arizona State, just to name a couple of people. And this is an article from Isaac Trotter of 24/7 Sports. Even Brandon Huntley Hatfield didn't necessarily do all that well as a freshman, had some moments. Imani Bates, it's kind of hard to tell. He had an injury halfway through his freshman season. But nonetheless, what I'm trying to get at is it's hit or miss. I don't think that the expectation should be that Trenton Flowers starts right away, but I also don't think the expectation should be that he's going to be a redshirt candidate. Simply put, it's up in the air. I think that he has the skill set to be solid right out of the gate. He is, to my understanding, 18 years old already and has played against a bunch of the members of the 2023 class, so that leads you to believe that, hey, Trenton Flowers is not like a regularly reclassified player. He's a guy that is already of age as many high school seniors. He's played against a lot of the current senior class. He's possibly, could fit in really well with the senior class. So I think that, and even if he was, obviously, even if he is 18, which I believe him to be, which just seems like, a lot of people have said that, even then, true freshmen aren't necessarily out of the gate ready to perform. We talked about Dennis Evans, a top 20 prospect, and how it's going to take some time for him to be able to contribute substantially on the offensive end. Now, granted, in my opinion and in the opinion of a handful of other people, Evans is the best rim protector in the 2023 class, which is going to help him see the court right away for the Cardinals. Now, for Trenton Flowers, he has that athleticism, has that size, has the defensive upside, has the creation upside, and then has that scoring upside. So I think that in my opinion, I think that the expectation for him, not to set the bar too high, not to set the bar too low, is that I think that realistically speaking is that he's a role player in 2023-24. Now, what does that look like? I'm not sure. Could he be a starter? Well, of course he could. Now, what I don't want you all to do is 10 months from now, if he has a good freshman season, don't come on to this video and say, well, I told you so. You said he wasn't going to be a starter. And look at him. He's a starter. I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's keep the bar realistic for the time being so we don't put too high expectations for Flowers in year one, but we don't undersell it either and put too low of expectations. I think that being a solid role player with tremendous upside is realistic for year one. So moving right on along, speaking of another roster move, Roosevelt Wheeler has entered the transfer portal after spending the past 2 seasons with the Cardinals. We'll talk about what that means for the Louisville front court in the next segment after we talk about our friends over at Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket is still underway. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. For me, it has been the cookies and cream bar that has been my favorite since I have been trying Built Bars and everything. But if you want a specific bar or team to win, then you'll be voting for that bar too. Support your team, support your bar or puff. And when you vote for your favorites, you will be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And to go one further, one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. Not only do they have the taste of a candy bar, they have the protein aspects of a protein bar, so it gives you that healthy benefits as well. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. Okay, heading into the second segment of the show, we just talked about an addition to the team. Now we're going to talk about a departure. Sophomore big man Roosevelt Wheeler entered the portal on Friday afternoon after spending 2 seasons with the Cardinals program, played 1 season under Chris Mack and Mike Mykasa, and obviously the next under Kenny Payne and company. In his career, averaged 1.4 points per game, 1.8 rebounds per contest, while shooting 47% from the field and 50% from the free throw line. Appeared in 46 games, did not record 1 start, and averaged about 7.7 minutes per contest. This was another departure for the Cardinals that it made a ton of sense. It was expected. It didn't really shock anyone. I mean, it's bittersweet. It's opens up another scholarship for the Cardinals to utilize through the transfer portal, which is good, but it's bitter because, we wanted Roosevelt Wheeler to work out. We saw that he had the talent, a former top 80 recruit in the country. A lot of people saw some promise in that first season, had some solid moments as a freshman, and then as a sophomore just didn't necessarily seem to add that progression, didn't necessarily seem to improve as we were hoping for. But nonetheless, it still is sad to see that it didn't work out here in Louisville. It doesn't surprise anyone to see that he wants a change of scenery, and we wish him the best of luck. I think that Rose's best days on the court are definitely ahead of him, and I'm excited to see where he lands, where he calls home next, and hopefully is able to carve out a significant role for that respective program moving forward. So to Rose, thank you for 2 years here at Louisville. Thank you for, being a part of this program, and we wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. But like I mentioned, wasn't necessarily a move that caught a lot of Louisville fans by surprise. He was probably one of the top 4 or 5 candidates to enter his name into the transfer portal, probably maybe even top 3 or four, along with Sidney Curry, Fabio Basili, Devin Ree, and obviously Roosevelt Wheeler. All four are now in the transfer portal. We'll talk on tomorrow's episode of the show about how Louisville still has 2 spots to fill and possibly even more with expected roster turnover. But nonetheless, Wheeler transferring, I think, gives you an opportunity to get better through the transfer portal. But looking at the front court for next season, obviously you have Dennis Evans and you have a couple of hybrid fours, players that can play the four. Obviously, Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, JJ Traynor. You have guys like Emmanuel Okorafor, who's probably a mixture between the 4 and the 5. Guys like, I think Caleb Glenn projects as a small ball 4, maybe even a wing in certain situations, certain rotations, so to speak. But I think that Roosevelt Wheeler leaving just kind of confirms the notion that you need to add another big man through the portal. Not only that, but you lost Sidney Curry as well. So you are down to big men, and the current big men you have, I think that Brandon Huntley-Hatfield and J.J. Traynor are both wings. Well, actually, J.J. Traynor is more of a wing than Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, but they're either a wing or a big man or a 4 or a power forward. I understand that it's positionless basketball, and that's all fine and good, but you still need, centers that can protect the rim. You need guys that can play the 5. As positionless as basketball has turned out to be, you still have to have that structure, guy that can play rim protector role and can be a solid, pick and roll threat, a solid player around the basket. So I think that looking at where Louisville's at currently in the roster, you have Emmanuel Okorafor, you have Dennis Evans. I think that those are probably your centers for next season. Okorafor being 6'9", even though he's listed as a center, I think he's more of a power forward with a high motor that has that wingspan to protest shots. But also, I think he projects more of a 4. Like I said, Dennis Evans, traditional 5, a guy that can protect the rim really well. Granted, he's a true freshman, and I think he's a little bit more of a project offensively while his skill set refines in terms of scoring the basketball, in terms of footwork around the rim, but he has that length, has that shot blocking instincts to be a solid rim protector right away. I just feel like Louisville, to really, really put themselves in a solid situation, you need to add one starting caliber level big man in the portal, as the 5. Whether that's John Hughley from Pittsburgh has been a name that a lot of people have thrown out there. There's been Churchill Abass, who people have talked about, but I think he projects more of a 4. Like Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, Emmanuel Okorafor, JJ Traynor. Now, in certain situations, you could play probably all 3 of those guys at the 5, but I think that you have to have more certainty in the front court. I'd like to see Louisville go out and add a ready-to-produce level big man through the portal that you can rely upon early on, while players like Dennis Evans, Emmanuel Okorafor, and the other guys on the team kind of are able to progress and develop, because I don't want to have to rely on true freshmen right away, regardless, whether it's Trenton Flowers, whether it's Caleb Glenn, whether it's Curtis Williams Jr., whether it's Dennis Evans. I think that, you are definitely putting yourself in a very interesting situation if you were having to rely on any of those players right away as freshmen. Now, I understand sometimes that's the case, but that's still a risk that you would be taking. So ultimately, I think that this was an expected move to see Rose enter the portal. It sucks. I'd like to see him land in a situation where he'll be in a spot to produce heavily right away. But it was also expected to have roster turnover, to have spots to go through the portal. You have to have the players leave to open up those scholarships. And unfortunately, this is just a result of that. So wish him the best of luck. But for next year's team, along with the Sidney Curry departure, this just means, in my opinion, that Louisville needs to go out and get a starting center in the transfer portal. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, talk about the women's basketball tournament. The Louisville Cardinals opened up the 5-12 matchup against Drake on Saturday evening and eased out a victory 83-81 over the Missouri Valley champion Bulldogs. We'll talk about that here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at FanDuel. The tournament is heating up. Now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back. If your first bet doesn't win, just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and even threes drained. The exclusive bets make it so fun to utilize. You can go over to a casino, to a sportsbook on FanDuel's app, so on and so forth. I would really much rather you use FanDuel's app because it gives you more flexibility than a regular casino or sportsbook. But if you check out the NBA bets on that app, from spread, money line, total, player props, points, rebounds, and assists, so on and so forth. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 and bonus bets back when you go FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So we're heading right on into the final segment of the show, discussing Louisville women's basketball's 83-81 victory over the Drake Bulldogs on Saturday evening at the Moody Center in the opening round of the women's basketball tournament. And it was a tough matchup against a very good offensive team. We talked earlier in the week about how Drake puts up a lot of points, and that they did. 81 points off of 52% shooting, 47% from behind the arc, 79% from the free throw line. Overall, just a very solid team. Jeff Wall said after the game that they struggled with Drake's movement off the ball, and you saw that in the first half after the Cardinals were consistently getting beat on backdoor cuts, on cuts to the basket. Drake has about 6 to 7 players that can spread out the floor and shoot the ball from well, hence the nearly 50% from behind the arc. Thankfully, Louisville matched some of that intensity and efficiency, 52% from the field, only 30% from the three-point line. But the Cardinals did what they have done multiple times this season, and they forced a ton of turnovers, forcing 19 turnovers. They did have 11 of their own, so it wasn't necessarily all that huge of a differentiating statistic, but they forced 13 steals and had 2 blocks. So the Cardinals forcing 19 turnovers was huge. And they also shot pretty decently from the free throw line, 74%. But overall, very solid effort from the Cardinals. It's one of those situations where it is win and advance, survive and advance, so to speak. You don't get, sure, you can get style points in the NCAA tournament, but the objective is to get to the next round, and that the Cardinals did. Hailey Van Lith came up strong in the second half of this one. She led all scorers with 26 points, 50% from the field, only 1 for 6 from the three-point line, but hit all 5 of her free throws to go along with 2 steals, 3 assists, and 1 rebound. She had some foul trouble in that first half, missed a lot of the second quarter, but was absolutely electric in the second half. That genius play call at the end of the game, in which all of the players at half court went one way and Hailey Van Lith went toward the basket, had the crucial and one finish through contact, which put the Cardinals up. Drake would still make things interesting with some big-time three-pointers, but Louisville, made their free throws and some big-time plays down the stretch, especially from Mykasa Robinson, who again scored in double figures, 14 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, 1 block, and 3 steals. She had some big-time clutch defensive plays in this one for the Cardinals. Nyla Harris, Olivia Cochran, Chrislyn Carr, Liz Dixon, Marissa Russell, all scoring over 9 points for Jeff Walls' team. I think that the takeaway from this one is that Louisville shot the ball well enough. They played good enough defense in terms of forcing turnovers, and they clutched up at the end. All things that need to happen against a mid-major team that won their conference. And look, 2 of the 5-12 matchups across the NCAA tournament, all went in favor of the 12 seeds. So this is a matchup that you're like, well, why is Louisville struggling against Drake? Well, other 5th-ranked seeds are struggling as well. So Washington State being one of them. I forget who the other team was, but nonetheless, here we are. So it's nice to see Louisville advancing. They will now take on the Texas Longhorns in the Moody Center, which is where Texas plays. 7 o'clock tip-off in the matchup at the Moody Center. Texas is a 8-point favorite in this matchup, which is a very interesting line. They are 4 of 5. They winners of 4 of 5 in their last 5. Louisville 3 of 5 losses against Virginia Tech and Notre Dame. So I don't think that it's an 8-point swing. I mean, Texas is 26-9. Louisville's 24-11. The Longhorns 15-2 at home. So hopefully Louisville is able to punch their ticket to the Sweet 16 when we talk on tomorrow's episode of the show. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen today. Make sure for your second listen, you're checking out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court, plus hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. But like I said, that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.